My girlfriend told me, "I feel unsafe with you." Then she started crying, and I realized our whole relationship was a lie. I remember this moment so vividly. It was a breaking point I didn't see coming. I'm 28, and I'd been dating my girlfriend, 26, for just over a year. We had this amazing connection, or so I thought. We laughed at the same jokes, supported each other's goals, and had this rhythm that felt natural. But recently, I'd noticed something off. I can't even explain it exactly. But you know when you just feel that something's different? That was us. Life hadn't been kind to me lately. Work was crushing. I'm a teacher, and the stress can pile up fast. And my family had been dealing with some messy drama. It felt like everything was weighing on me at once. Normally, I'd keep this kind of stuff locked up tight, be the strong one who doesn't burden anyone. But I'd been trying to change that about myself, to actually trust someone enough to share what's going on. So one evening, I decided to open up to her. I told her everything. How the pressure was getting to me. How it was hard to even see where the light at the end of the tunnel might be. I was vulnerable, raw, and honestly a little scared of how she might react. Her response hit me like a brick. "I don't want to sound harsh," she started, which is never a good sign. "But when you talk like this, I feel unsafe. I need you to be strong. I can't deal with both your problems and mine." Unsafe. That word just hung there, echoing in my head. I felt like I'd just been sucker punched. I tried to explain myself, to tell her that being open about my struggles didn't mean I was weak, that sharing with her was my way of showing trust. I told her it took so much for me to even admit that I wasn't okay. But she wasn't hearing it. She doubled down, telling me, "Everyone has rough patches, but you just have to deal with it." That's when I stopped talking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I sat there, silent, while this huge realization was dawning on me. This woman I'd spent a year with, who I thought I could share my whole self with, didn't actually want the real me. She wanted her idea of me. A guy who never breaks, never bends, and certainly never needs help. And that wasn't me. Not anymore. Last night, I ended things. She was shocked, upset, told me I was throwing away a good relationship over a misunderstanding. She even said I was punishing her for being honest. Some of my friends are now saying I overreacted, that I should have given her another chance. But you know what? I don't think I did. If being with her means I have to lock away parts of myself and never be vulnerable, then it's not a relationship I want. Sometimes letting go is the only way to find the version of yourself you're meant to be. Update 1. A few days after the breakup, I was spiraling, second-guessing everything. My friends' opinions were splitting down the middle, with some telling me I did the right thing and others hinting I might have been too quick to pull the trigger. My ex had texted me once since we ended things, saying she was disappointed I didn't give her a chance to explain and that she felt like I had turned her into a villain. I left it on red, not because I wanted to be petty, but because I genuinely didn't know what to say. I wasn't sure if I had the energy to go back and forth about what happened. I spent a lot of time replaying the conversation that led to the breakup, trying to dissect what exactly bothered me so much. Her words, "I need you to be strong," felt like a slap in the face every time I thought about them. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the weight they carried. It made me feel like my emotions weren't valid, like I wasn't allowed to struggle, even in front of someone I was supposed to trust. What stung even more was that I had been trying so hard to break out of my old patterns, the ones where I bottled everything up and dealt with it alone. To have that effort dismissed so casually felt like a betrayal. I talked to a few close friends about it, hoping their perspectives would help me make sense of everything. One of them, someone I've known since college, pointed out something that hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, "You've been dating her for over a year, but do you feel like she actually knows the real you?" I wanted to answer yes, because I thought that was true, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't sure. There were parts of myself I had been holding back, not because she told me to, but because I didn't want to risk rocking the boat. I'd catch myself sugarcoating bad days or glossing over things that bothered me because I wanted to be the easygoing boyfriend and avoid conflict. That realization made me feel sick. If I couldn't be fully honest with her after a year, was this relationship ever as solid as I thought it was? What really cemented my decision was a conversation I had with my sister. She's been through a lot in her own relationships, including a divorce, so I value her advice. When I told her what happened, she didn't hesitate. "You did the right thing," she said, "because it's better to find this out now than 5 years down the road when you're even more invested." She reminded me that a relationship where you can't be vulnerable isn't sustainable, no matter how good it seems on the surface. That stuck with me. I started to see the breakup not as a failure, but as a necessary step toward finding something healthier. A few days later, I got a message from my ex's best friend, which threw me for a loop. She said she wasn't trying to take sides, but wanted me to know that my ex was really struggling and felt blindsided by the breakup. She also mentioned that my ex had been opening up to her about some of her own issues, including feeling overwhelmed and unsure of how to handle her emotions. That part caught me off guard. I had no idea she was going through anything like that because she never mentioned it to me. It made me wonder if maybe we were both guilty of hiding parts of ourselves from each other, creating this facade of a perfect relationship that neither of us could actually sustain. I considered reaching out to her after that message, not to get back together, but to at least clear the air. I didn't want to leave things on such a sour note, especially if she felt like I had blindsided her. Before I could decide, though, she texted me again, this time apologizing. She said she had been reflecting on our relationship and realized she had been unfair to me. She admitted that her reaction during that conversation was influenced by her own fears and insecurities, and that she hadn't been ready to face them at the time. She even thanked me for being honest with her, saying it made her realize she needed to work on herself. That message brought me some closure, but it also left me with a lot of questions. If we had both been more open from the start, could we have avoided all of this? Or were we just fundamentally mismatched? I don't know if I'll ever have a clear answer, but what I do know is that I learned a lot from this experience. I realized how important it is to find someone who values emotional honesty as much as I do. Someone who doesn't see vulnerability as a weakness, but as a way to build trust and connection. In the end, I think we both did the best we could with the tools we had at the time. I don't regret the breakup because it pushed me to reevaluate what I want in a relationship and, more importantly, what I'm willing to compromise on. Maybe she'll do the same and come out of this stronger. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding myself and making sure I don't fall back into old habits of bottling everything up. It's not easy, but I'm determined to keep moving forward. Update 2. It's been about a month since the breakup and things have been complicated. I thought I'd feel a sense of relief or at least clarity by now, but instead, I've been riding this weird roller coaster of emotions. Some days, I'm confident I made the right decision, proud of myself for standing up for what I need in a relationship. Other days, I miss her. Not the specific fights or the way things ended, but the comfort of having someone. The inside jokes, the late-night talks, the little rituals that made the relationship feel like home. To make matters more confusing, my ex reached out again. This time, it wasn't an apology or an attempt to rehash what happened. She wanted to meet up, as friends, to talk about how we've both been feeling. At first, I wasn't sure if that was a good idea. I mean, where do you draw the line between closure and reopening old wounds? But I agreed, mostly because there were still things I hadn't said, things I wanted her to hear directly from me. We met at a coffee shop we used to go to all the time, which in hindsight might have been a mistake. The familiarity of it hit me like a ton of bricks the moment I walked in. She was already there, sitting at our usual table, looking a mix of nervous and determined. We started with small talk, which was weirdly harder than jumping into the heavy stuff. After a few minutes, she just came out with it. She told me she's been in therapy since the breakup. Apparently, our fight and the way I left made her realize she had some deeply ingrained beliefs about relationships and masculinity that weren't healthy. She said she grew up in a household where emotions were seen as burdens, where the strong and silent type was idolized, and anything else was seen as weak or untrustworthy. Hearing her admit that felt like peeling back a layer I'd never gotten to see before. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation, and that mattered to me. She asked me why I had decided to leave instead of trying to work through it together. That was hard to answer. I told her that in the moment, it felt like her reaction to my vulnerability wasn't something I could come back from. It wasn't just the words she said, but the way they made me feel, like I couldn't be fully myself around her without risking rejection. I explained that I had spent years hiding my struggles and pretending to have it all together, and that being with someone who couldn't hold space for my emotions felt like going backward. Her response surprised me. She said she understood, but then she added something that's been echoing in my head ever since. She said, "I think we were both scared, just in different ways. You were scared to show weakness, and I was scared of what it meant to see it." That hit me hard because, in a way, she was right. Even though I thought I was being open and vulnerable, a part of me was still bracing for rejection. And when it came, I didn't fight for us. I just left. We talked for hours. It wasn't all deep and heavy. There were moments where we laughed about stupid stuff from our relationship, moments where I remembered why I fell for her in the first place. By the end of it, I felt a strange mix of closure and confusion. She didn't ask to get back together, and I didn't offer. But there was this unspoken understanding between us that we both cared, even if we couldn't make it work. Since that conversation, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to show up in a relationship, not just for your partner, but for yourself. I've started seeing a therapist too, something I probably should have done years ago. It's been eye-opening to realize how much of my identity has been tied up in being strong, to the point where I didn't even recognize the ways I was hurting myself by refusing to ask for help. One thing I've learned is that vulnerability isn't just about sharing your struggles. It's also about being willing to face the possibility that someone might not react the way you hope. It's about being honest, even when it's messy and uncomfortable. I wasn't great at that in my relationship. I thought I was. But looking back, I can see how much I held back, how much I expected her to just get it, without fully explaining myself. Do I regret breaking up with her? That's a tough question. In some ways, yes, because I think there was potential for us to grow together if we'd been willing to do the work. But at the same time, I think the breakup was the wake-up call we both needed. She's working on herself, I'm working on myself. And maybe that's what had to happen for us to even have a shot at being better, whether it's with each other or with someone else down the line. For now, I'm focusing on figuring out who I am outside of a relationship, what I want, and what I need. It's been messy and uncomfortable, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm actually moving forward instead of just treading water. Update 3. It's been 6 months since everything happened, and I think I've finally found my footing. Looking back, the breakup was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but it was also the right one. It forced me to face a lot of uncomfortable truths about myself and my approach to relationships. As much as I wanted to blame my ex for how things ended, the reality is, we were both carrying our own baggage, and neither of us was fully equipped to deal with it at the time. Therapy has been a game changer for me. I've learned a lot about why I struggle to let people see me at my most vulnerable and how that mindset was hurting my relationships, not just with my ex, but with friends and family too. I used to think I had to shoulder everything alone, that asking for help was some kind of failure. Now, I'm starting to understand that being open doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. One of the most surprising things has been how much my relationship with my friends has changed. Before, I'd keep everything surface level, not wanting to burden anyone with my problems. But after the breakup, I started letting them in more, and the response was overwhelming. It's like I gave them permission to be vulnerable with me too, and it's made our connection so much deeper. It's also made me realize how much I was isolating myself before, even when I thought I wasn't. As for my ex, we're not in regular contact, but we've exchanged a few friendly messages here and there. She's still in therapy and seems to be doing well. She told me she's been working on her own issues with vulnerability and trust, which I think is incredible. There's no bad blood between us, and I'm grateful for that. I don't know if we'll ever reconnect romantically, but I do know that what we went through together taught us both a lot. In a weird way, the breakup gave me a clearer picture of what I want in a partner. I want someone who sees vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness. Someone who doesn't just tolerate emotional honesty, but actively values it. And I want to be that person for someone else, too. I've started dating again, and while it's still early days, I feel like I'm approaching it from a much healthier place. I'm not trying to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be anymore. I'm just being myself, flaws and all, and trusting that the right person will accept me for it. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that relationships are never as simple as we want them to be. They take work, patience, and a willingness to grow, both individually and together. I used to think that love was enough to make a relationship work, but now I know it's so much more than that. It's about showing up for each other in ways that feel safe, honest, and supportive. It's about being willing to face the hard stuff, even when it's uncomfortable. So yeah, things didn't turn out the way I thought they would, but I'm okay with that. I've grown more in the past 6 months than I have in years, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm heading in the right direction. Wherever life takes me from here, I'm ready for it.